Hello and welcome to Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. Today we're welcoming a guest who first appeared on our show 3 years ago. Kevin Jarvis is back to talk with us about his second book, which invites the reader to tag along with young Oliver through many exciting and mystical tales of adventure, all told through the spectacles of Jack McGarvey, and that's the title of the book. And we'll talk about his music. Welcome back to Scribes and Songsters.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How have you been since we last saw you?
Yeah, aging and raising children. And
yeah, just like the rest of us.
Asking questions later.
Yeah. How old are your children?
So I have a 10-year-old, then a 14-year-old daughter, and then a 16-year-old boy.
Well, you're busy.
I'm very busy.
So, since it's been 3 years, just sort of remind people where you're from and, how you got to writing.
Amherstburg, Ontario. That's where I'm from. I kind of wrote my first book back in 2007. It was really about how the effects of health on the body, or the effects of stress on the body. And then my second book was a Christian apologetic, which I was here on the show for, From One Father to Another, what God taught me about through being a father.
Yes, a very fine book that was.
Thank you. Yeah, and so I don't know what else I can tell you.
What sort of your background? I mean, do you do a different other job?
Yeah, so I'm a full-time special constable, 20 years now in Windsor. So that's been eventful.
Yes, I'm sure it must.
Yeah.
You'll have to write about that eventually.
I could come up with many stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what inspired this book, The Spectacles of Jack McGarvey?
It was a story that just kept bouncing around in my head for like 4 or 5 years. And there was a scripture quote I read once, and it said, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived the things that God has prepared for those. And I thought to myself, I know I could never think of it, but it would be really cool if I could come up with something that would explore that. And then this idea of Oliver and Jack came to my mind, and over like 5 years, it just kept downloading. And next, I just started to pen it, and it came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about it. Not a whole lot, because,
don't want to give it away.
We'll discuss it. And I don't want you to, tell them everything, because it's so tempting to sort of talk about it all.
Right. Yes. It's basically little Oliver McGarvey is really close to his grandfather. And his grandfather used to tell him a story every single night before bed, because the grandfather lived with them. And so his grandfather dies. And on the evening of the funeral, kind of Oliver is thinking like, man, I really miss my grandfather, and his parents go to bed. And he decides to sneak down into his grandfather's room just to kind of get a sense of his grandfather again. And while he's in the room, he smells his aftershave, and he sits in his old reading chair, this old leather chair. And he sees this book on the table with some glasses, and he thought to himself, he picks it up, looks at the book, kind of goes, this isn't the story my grandfather was reading to me, because he doesn't understand it, and decides just to put on his grandfather's spectacles to kind of see what the words would look like in the book. And when he puts them on, his grandfather has a story to tell him, another story.
I mean, it's such a clever idea. How'd you come up with that?
I don't know if I did. It just came to me, honestly. Yeah, it was just one of those things that it just came to me. And the more I thought about it, I was like, the epic scenes in the book would continue to come to me. But for probably 5 years, I never had a subplot.
Yeah.
So I just put the book on the side. I was like, that part makes sense, but I had no way to tie it. So it just kept sitting there and brewing, and then eventually, yeah.
Wow. So let's talk about some of the things that Oliver gets to learn. Mm-hmm. Of course, one of the big themes is sort of learning to deal with death, especially by a child. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what is it that he learns about that?
Well, I think he learns that death isn't the end. That's the first thing he learns, and that he learns that there's another adventure, or several adventures. when it looks like the curtain's closed, it's just the beginning of another show. So that's kind of, I think, the main thing. I mean, there are a lot of deeper things he learns in the book.
Yes.
Obviously, spiritual truths that I think the reader could read it as just an adventure. But if you're actually reading the story, like you said, you read it right. So there's a lot in there that Yeah.
A lot of spirituality. And I was wondering, are you a very spiritual person? Because I can't see someone writing what you wrote if you weren't a spiritual person.
I definitely am. I mean, I have faith in Christ. That's my entire life. I'm actually in the seminary now, so I'm going through to another. I'm only a year and a half in, so I got 4 years. I don't even know if I'll make it. But my life, I really do. My life is dedicated to God. So, yeah.
So let's talk about some of the things that his grandfather tells him about. I was fascinated by Thomas.
So Thomas is this guide that kind of meets Jack. And Jack in the book refers to over there. He just says over there a lot. So when Jack gets over there, he has this guide, Thomas. And Thomas is just this, again, I just pictured this guy guiding him through and having these, conversations, this relationship building with him. And I think Thomas teaches Jack a lot of things, which obviously gets relayed back to Oliver. So
now there are one of the things at the raging sea. What was that a metaphor for?
So the raging sea was about the storm inside of all of us, right? And in the book, without, it doesn't really give it away, Thomas tells Jack, hey, be prepared. You're going to steer the ship. And Jack's looking at him going, okay, well, I've never really steered a ship. And they start out and it's smooth sailing. So Jack's like, well, this is cool. Like, I don't know why it's called the raging sea. And Thomas says, well, we don't know how big the storm's going to get. Depends on how much the storm is in you. And he's like, I didn't have a storm inside me. And that book, and it kind of goes on to explain that. So the raging sea is a reflection of what was going on inside of Jack.
And another, I thought, very interesting thing was, why God brought us into the world and allow bad things to happen to us.
Yeah.
And the explanation for that.
Yeah. So the explanation, I think, was God brought us into the world. And people, I think we all ask that question. It's like, I've asked it my own children sometimes, like, there's so much hurt in this world and suffering. And so I remember one time specifically asking that question. I was walking down the street because my friends were just diagnosed with cancer, 2 of them. My other friends lost a child from a genetic disease. And I was like, I don't understand why you would do this, God. And then it's almost like God put it back on my heart. He's like, well, you brought 3 of your children into the same world. Why did you do it? And I was like, oh my goodness. And then I started to realize the things I wanted my kids to experience, the relationship I wanted to be in with them. And I thought to myself, maybe God felt the same. And so I explore that again in this book too, kind of in a conversational way. Yeah.
And then you go from the raging sea to the valley of wind.
So the valley of wind it's about faith. Right? Because literally Thomas is like, well, hey, we're going to jump off this cliff and there's these winds coming all over and they're just going to carry you right onto these peaks. And Jack's going, really?
Yeah.
I don't think so. And Thomas takes off and Jack's kind of going, uh-oh. And that goes into, I love that part of the journey because there's a dark part of that journey too.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And then the Sunday homily by his father. And he says, the heart is deceitful. That's pretty profound.
Yeah, that comes directly from the scripture. And I've learned that, dare I say, in law enforcement, some of the things I've seen in myself and people that I've had to unfortunately, come across. And there's a lot of darkness in our souls. There's light too, but there's darkness there. And I would say, I dare anyone to tell me every time they followed their heart, it was perfect. I don't think so. Right? Like, I really don't think that's true. So, yeah,
it is. I mean, you've got to have a combination.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was a snowy path.
Yeah.
And the last one, now I made a note of Forest of Darkness.
Forest of Darkness and the Forest of Light.
And the Forest of Light.
Yeah. That was my favorite scene to write.
There was such an interesting part of the journey. Another thing I thought was really neat was a human doing versus a human being. I'd never heard it put like that before.
Yeah.
Do you live like that?
I think I did live like that for probably quite a few years. My wife would attest to it. Probably my closest friends was that I was always doing something. And rarely just being. There was always it was always a means to the end.
I wanted to talk about your songwriting. And you've got you've been writing some new stuff, and you have a new video.
Yeah, so I have the video. I think you guys are going to show is an older kind of collage I put together, just like old live pictures of me and the band and things like that. There's some family stuff thrown in that's kind of relevant to the song. But I'm still writing songs. I still love songwriting. I'm always dabbling in that. I have a studio here in Kingsville.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I just kind of go in there and record when I can, when I kind of feel like I want to. Record other people sometimes, but I'm always songwriting. Yeah.
And your genre?
It's everything. Like I really don't.
Yeah.
I write all kinds, from blues to piano to rock to Christian to you name it. Yeah.
How prolific are you?
I don't know.
Do you write like a song a week, or I mean, do you write lots?
It goes in spurts. So like even recently, probably 4 or 5 months, I haven't really picked up an instrument other than to teach my children. They're trying to the two of us are learning guitars. They're learning guitars right now.
Are you giving lessons?
I am.
How much do you charge?
I don't know yet. I might have to up my prices considering inflation. Yeah, the new tax coming over from the States. But yeah, it's and then I go on spurts where I'll just write 2 albums worth of songs. It just kind of doesn't when I move to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you write messages in your songs?
A lot of it is. So the last couple albums I did was very Christian based. So it was a lot of they're almost prayers. Like when I actually record the song, I realized, oh, this was me praying. That's what this was. It was a prayer, and I think people connected with it because it felt like it was their prayer too.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell us about the video that we're going to see.
So this is a song called Broken Promises. And it's kind of like, I don't know what I was writing. When I wrote it, it kind of just came out. And then I realized I was kind of writing probably about a few people. So just relationships in my life that kind of maybe didn't work out, or things that were unresolved. So I was picturing probably 4 or 5 people when I wrote the song. And then it just came out. And it's one of those ones, like in the studio, I remember writing it in the studio with the band. It was a very emotional song, writing it. And yeah, a lot of good memories there. And I think that's why I made a montage of it. Like it was just one of those things I decided to put it together. And yeah.
And does sort of, when you get that inspiration, does it then take very long to get it down?
It used to when I didn't have my own studio, because then I'd have to go in, and I used to go to SLR Studios in Windsor, Martin Bach. Yeah. And, it was a lot of money and time and a lot of scheduling. So now it's like I get an idea, I can just jump in my own studio and have the song out in 4 or 5 days.
Awesome. Well, let's have a look at Broken Promises.
No more broken promises, 'cause I know all too well see these white flags waving. This is the last time I come. Pull yourself from under you and tread through your own shit. And I just can't keep hanging here. This is the last time I call. And I stand here waiting, and I know you're jaded, and I can't keep hanging, 'cause this is the way that I'm gonna find peace. I chase you, man. And you must break your fall. I wish you would just follow through. This is the last time I call, 'cause I stand here waiting, and I know you're jail, but I can't keep hanging, 'cause this is the way that I'm gonna find I know all too well.
Did you have fun writing this and producing it?
Yeah, I mean, I love writing music, and it's kind of changed over the years, because I used to really love the recording process, and I still like the recording process, but I like live. I like just going out there and playing the music. I don't know why that's reversed, because I used to really love just being in the studio. But now that I'm doing it myself, I think it feels like work sometimes. Where it's like, hey, I wrote this song, I like the song, the people I wrote it with like the song. Now it's like, oh, I have to record it now. So now I have to track it all, and I do all of my own instrumentation now. So I don't have any band anymore. So I do everything. From every instrument on the album, I do everything myself. So it's like I enjoy it, but it sometimes feels like a steep hill to get up. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
How long would it take you to sort of go through the whole editing process?
So it depends if the song, if I already had the song written, then I recorded it. Sometimes it goes really smoothly. Like I can be done a song in 4 or 5 days. Other times it's like 3 weeks. Because I listen to it, then we do what we call the car mix. So you play it on the car and go, oh, it's too bassy, or it doesn't sound right. So then you're bringing it back, and you're just messing with it. And you have people listen to it, and they go, I don't know if I like this. And so you're your own producer. You're producing a song, you're writing a song, you're recording the song. So you're kind of taking on all those roles. So sometimes you can get pretty in an argument with yourself. Like, that's good. No, it's kind of rework that. So
and then, of course, you have to market it yourself.
Right. Which that's made easy nowadays. There's this platform called DistroKid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I pay for it. It's like once I'm done my song, I upload it to DistroKid, and it goes out to everyone. They keep track of all the money. You have a bank. Everything is done for you.
And do they take a cut?
Yeah, very small cut.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's actually, for artists, it's amazing. Yeah.
So is that just for music?
Yeah, so far it's for music. I'm actually trying to find something more for a book, because the last book I wrote was through a publisher, and I just didn't enjoy that process as much that I thought I was going to. So this one, I've done everything myself. Yeah.
I've gone through both processes, with publishers and without. And I find going the publisher route very stressful.
Yeah.
And so it would be good if there was a good platform.
Might give me an idea here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me know what you come up with.
I will. Absolutely.
Because I'm sure there are many authors, and certainly many we've had on our show, who would really benefit from something like that.
Yeah.
So do you have any other music in the pipeline?
No, not right now. Like I said, I've been concentrating on the spectacles here, trying to get that done. And Will Hawksworth, another local person, one of my longest, oldest, best friends, he did all the design, typesetting for the book, everything.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
And the cover is very good.
Yeah, he did all that.
Yeah. Very talented.
Will is extremely talented. Yeah.
So I want to go back to the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's one, sometimes because I have to read a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a very fast reader, I tend to, sort of read quickly and make notes and absorb. And then sometimes there's a book that makes me go slower. And your book was one of them.
Oh.
And so, yeah, people should know that. It's really worth a read.
Awesome.
But I wanted to talk to you about, there's another fellow in the book called Frederick James.
Mm-hmm.
And Oliver's dad does a eulogy for him.
Mm-hmm.
What's the lesson in that eulogy? It was quite something.
Yeah, so the Frederick James, so 2 years ago, one of my oldest best friends died. And his middle name was Frederick James. So it's kind of an ode to him, a eulogy to Frederick James. So people that know me and know our circle will know that right away. But the message in that, one of the lines, because Frederick James writes his own eulogy, and Samuel has to read it.
Yeah.
And there's some comedy in there, but there's some really deep, heavy spiritual stuff. So the message is basically what it is like to live a Christian life and what it is like to live in a world where the world tells you that, the things you can't see aren't real. And so one of the lines that Frederick James uses, I bet you were wondering why I'm talking about such dark things at my own funeral. But he says, one's supposed to share the most important things at his funeral, and I think I've done that. And that's kind of the lesson of the eulogy of Frederick James.
And of course, Oliver, at one point, hears what he thinks is his father questioning God.
Yeah. Yeah, so right in the beginning of the book, that was the subplot I was looking for forever. And then I thought to myself, well, what if it was this ordained minister that was having doubts in his own faith? And that kind of just came together for me. I said, oh, there's the subplot. So Samuel, he does a sermon in the book, and he has a conversation with a student about, why God brings evil into the world or why evil is in the world. So Samuel is kind of the subplot. He's this minister that is not losing his faith, but having doubts. So in the beginning of the book, Oliver overhears this conversation between his dad, Samuel, and his mom, and he's kind of going through like, why do all these crappy things happen to people in the world? Like, here I am telling people my dad's in heaven and everything's great, but I'm having these, my own doubts in my faith. So yeah.
And they have a lovely relationship, the boy and his parents, don't they?
Yes. Yeah, and Oliver, he's got an imagination like most young boys do. So I can't give that part of the story. I'm not going to give that away, right? But that's kind of part of the magic of it too, I think is.
Yeah, I agree. Was there a land of mirrors?
Yeah, the mountain of ice.
Yes. I thought that was fascinating. So tell people about it.
So one of the spectacles that Jack takes Oliver on is there's a mountain of ice, and so he approaches this area where it looks like trees, but they're huge, 20-foot tall icicles. And Thomas ends up telling him that, look, like when you get into this mountain of ice, you have to be careful because there's going to start to be these images forming in the ice, and they're going to be images of what you thought you were in this life. Some of those images will be correct, some of them won't be correct. And if you start drawn to the wrong images, you're going to go down the wrong path. So that scene is, he's kind of gets drawn into some of the darker images, and I don't really want to say what happens, but he ends up finding his way out of that in a way. So it's kind of like the whole part of Jack's spectacles is that he's journeying towards heaven, but he has to get through some things. He has to shed some things of himself before he can go there. And that's kind of, the Mountain of Mirrors was a big one there. Yeah.
Yes. It also, I kept thinking, you know, it's sort of all of us, you know, you look in the mirror in the morning and you ask yourself, who am I today?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, maybe you ask yourself when you're 30 and then when you're 50.
Yeah.
And am I at 50 who I was when
That's
I was
right.
10?
Right.
And sometimes we are,
Right.
and sometimes we're not, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But it's too bad when we're 10, we can't sort of know all these things, isn't it?
Right. Right. And mirrors lie.
Mirrors lie.
Right. There's some truth in that.
What do you want people to get from your book?
I want them to get, first of all, a good adventure. I always wanted to write a book that I wanted to, this is the book I wanted to read. So I kind of want someone to get into the book and it just draw them in to like, you know, I always think of like Chronicles of Narnia from C.S. Lewis, or
Yes,
Wizard of Oz, or, you know, like just something that is, yes, it's a fantasy what's going on, but it's so real.
Yes.
And so I want them to have that adventure, and I want them to think about God. I want them to think about, because this is a Christian apologetic at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I could see a movie as I was reading it. So don't.
I just have to say, I've had about 7 pre-readers now, and they've all said that.
Yes, absolutely. I can see it.
Yes.
And where can people buy your books?
So it's the main place is going to be Amazon. So I'll have that link at amazon.ca. It'll be there. And then I'm going to have it in the River Bookshop in Amherstburg. And then there's the Sanctuary here in Kingsville, and probably chapters in Indigo in Windsor.
Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, we have to go. It was really delightful to read this book and then, you know, have you here to discuss it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, that's it for another Scribes and Songsters show. Very special thanks to our guest today, Kevin Jarvis. Thanks to our Scribes and Songsters team, producer Brian Sweet, and technical producer and editor Gary Glass. Grateful thanks to Tony Toldo and the Toldo Foundation, and to Neil and Tina Queering for their support. We really appreciate it. But thank you for watching. Hope to see you soon, right back here on Scribes and Songsters. I'm Veronique Mandel. Bye for now.